So, to end the last video, I made the potentially bold statement that God of War 3 was my favorite game in the Greek saga. Now, just because it's my favorite game does not mean in any way, shape, or form that it is a flawless game. And I, in my personal opinion, attribute the vast majority of God of War 3's issues to two major factors. The first being the overall character of Zeus, and the second being the reintroduction of Pandora's box as a primary plot fixture. Now, I think the first thing I'm going to do is my best to give the uninitiated an oversimplified rundown of all of the lore from game to game and catch them up so that we can use it as a base for all of my arguments when it comes to the meat and potatoes of this thing. And if you're someone out there watching this who is a pretty significant fan like I am, feel free to correct me or to educate if I happen to misspeak or misremember or happen to skip over something important or anything like that. Feel free to back me up in the comments. But for the rest of you, I think if you're taking notes, the very first thing worth jotting down, and really the thing that kind of kicks this all into motion, is that Kratos has a near-death experience on the battlefield while defending his homeland from the barbarian horde, in which he calls to Ares for aid. Something along the lines of, "Hey, if you smite all my enemies and allow me to live, my soul is yours." Obviously, Ares accepts, which unfortunately leads to Kratos being tricked into murdering his family, which breeds these terrible nightmares and these visions and things that plague the character as we go forward. That leads into God of War Ascension. And I think by this point it's safe to say that Kratos may or may not realize the error of his ways. Maybe making such a deal with such a devil wasn't the wisest thing to do, and maybe he's bitten off more than he can chew. Obviously, he's none too happy about the fact that he was tricked into slaughtering his wife and child, and he seeks to end those bonds, to break his association with Ares. This is also where we get a little context as to why Ares was so gung-ho to accept Kratos' invitation initially, as well as why he tricked Kratos into slaughtering his family. He did so as a step in a ritual to, I guess, strengthen the bonds or make them more permanent. He needed Kratos to make a personal blood sacrifice, so that I guess he could be used as a weapon in Ares' scheme to overthrow his father, Zeus. Kratos catches wind of this, puts a stop to it, and at the end of the game, he's standing there basically asking the gods, like, all I want to do is be free. I want to be at peace. I want to wash, the blood off my hands, and I want these um, terrible visions and everything of all the bad things that I've done to leave me. Will you please do that? And then the gods basically clap back with, you've broken your bonds prematurely. You've betrayed your agreement with Ares, and because of that, why don't we put you on this kind of probational period where you serve us and do everything we tell you to do for the next 10 years, and at the end of that, we'll talk about it and we'll see what we can do. Which leads to Chains of Olympus. Persephone, who is very jaded against the gods, has her very own reasons to be angry with them and to hate them and to conspire against them, has kidnapped Helios, which plunges the land into permanent darkness. And she uses the god of dreams to hypnotize all of the Olympians so that they're out of the way for when she unveils her master plan to, collapse all of existence and kill everybody and everything. And as Kratos is learning about all this and figuring all this out, he finds this goddess who isn't amongst the sleeping. I don't remember who she is or why she's awake or how she fits into everything, but she basically is like, hey, I know you don't really give a crap about any of this, one way or the other, but if you do this, the gods just might reward you with the easing of your burden that you seek to end. Again, may or may not. Pretty big if, but they might. So you should do it. Obviously, they don't, which leads to God of War 1, which takes place at the tail end of his 10-year sentence. Ares is back again, destroying the city of Athens. And Athena, not liking this, obviously, asks Kratos to look into it and handle the situation. And the reason she's doing this is because of Zeus's cardinal rule that states that the gods cannot act against each other. They can't take up arms against each other. They can do nothing to each other. So if something like this arises, they need to find a mortal or some other being to do their bidding and handle the situation on their behalf. And because of Kratos and Ares' prior history, he doesn't really hesitate to jump on the ability to get even with Ares. So he is told about Pandora's box, which contains the power to kill a god, which he finds, opens, and uses to wipe out Ares, and thus becoming the kind of stand-in demigod of war, replacing Ares. Not a permanent god for reasons that we will get into in the next game here. Ghost of Sparta. So he's been sitting on his makeshift throne as the god of war, if you will, for a while. He's had a lot of sleepless nights because he can't shake these nightmares and these dreams, and visions that he's having of his earthly mortal mom being somewhere out there and everything. And he's having them so badly that it compels him to, consult the gods. Why am I seeing all this? What does it mean? How do I make it stop? Type thing. in which the gods basically reply with, "Don't worry about it. It, they don't mean anything. It's none of your concern. We're totally not up to anything. But even so, sit back down and, shut up. Everything's cool." Right? And the more they persist, so does he, and he ends up finding out that his mom is in fact still alive, though cursed as sort of this booby trap, and he is forced to kill her, unfortunately. But on her deathbed, she tells him that he is the son of Zeus, and that his brother Deimos, who has been missing, I guess, since childhood, is still alive and out there somewhere, um, being held prisoner by the god of death at the behest of Zeus, who back in the day was told by an oracle or something about this prophecy in which one of his sons would one day rise to power and overthrow him. And because he obviously doesn't want that to happen, doesn't want to give up his seat of power, he does his best to get ahead of this thing and act on it. So he sends his, I believe it was Ares and Athena, to seek out the one that he thinks is the person spoken of in the prophecy, and imprisons them, um, with the god of death as their guard. Kratos obviously figures this out, busts Deimos out, and together they, destroy the god of death. At the end of which, unfortunately, Deimos also dies. And at the end of the game, Kratos again just says, "Please, for the love of God, all I want is for these visions to go away. Can you make it happen?" And this is the point where the gods kind of confess and go, I know we know that we said that we would do this and we would look into it, and we came to the conclusion that you did these heinous things. The blood is on your hands, so to speak, and you deserve to be punished for them. You deserve to live with them forever. So we're not going to do that. But hey, the good news is, the silver lining is that because your mom and your brother are now dead, you no longer have any ties to the mortal realm. And you can now join us on Mount Olympus as the full-on god of war. Obviously, Kratos isn't really interested in this. This isn't what he wants. This is never what he wanted, but he goes along with it anyway, because I guess why not? And the more time he spends in this position, the angrier he gets, the more angsty he gets. And it prompts Zeus to do something about it. So this is where Zeus betrays him, kills him, and sends him to Hades. So the plot is about Kratos crawling out of Hades and going back in time to stop his betrayal slash murder. And this is the catalyst as to the one-man war that God of War 3 is. It's the climax. It is the cathartic release of all the rage, all the anger, all the violence, everything that it's been leading up to. So you have that. And then towards the back end of the game, I would say probably one of the final cutscenes of the game, though I don't necessarily remember exactly where. They give you cutscenes where they give you this lore that says basically from the moment Kratos opened Pandora's box to do what he needed to do with Ares, everything went tits up from there. And it explains how the purpose of Pandora's box was so that Zeus could trap within it all of the bad things that were from the old world, the time of the Titans. Basically, the Olympians, led by Zeus, went to war against the Titans in that overthrowing of their father Kronos, at the end of which he took all of the bad stuff from their world from that time, locked it in Pandora's box, never to plague the world again. Well, Kratos, unbeknownst to him, opening the box, unleashed all of them into the world again. And one of them was this overwhelming sense of fear and paranoia, which went into Zeus and made him incredibly paranoid and fearful of the prophecy and Kratos' involvement in it, which is where the target gets painted on his back, and there's this overwhelming bloodlust and this need to take Kratos out. Which, if you take that and you mix it in with everything that I just explained to you, I think that's where you can really see the troubles start to bubble on the surface. And it really gives off this feeling that they almost wanted this trilogy to be separate from everything else. They wanted it to be the standalone thing that stands amongst the rest of these games and amongst all this lore as its own thing. And to a certain degree, I can understand why they would want to do this. As a writer, as a storyteller, as a creator myself, I can understand the appeal of wanting to bring things full circle. They started, everything started because of Pandora's box, whereby everything needs to end with Pandora's box. My stance on it is that if you can't make it work with everything else that you've laid out in terms of story, lore, characters, all of that, don't force it. If it doesn't work, it just doesn't work. Why don't I say it works? Well, for one thing, if it's being said that the opening of Pandora's box is where Zeus sort of realizes or becomes aware of the fact and scared of the fact of the prophecy and of Kratos. Ghost of Sparta says that he was aware of it when they were kids, right? He was aware of it way before Kratos even came into the actual picture, way before he even touched Pandora's box. And if the argument to that is going to be, everything outside of this trilogy is non-canon, they're all spin-offs, they don't matter. My counter to that would be, yes, they do. For one thing, Persephone shows up dead in God of War 3, which would bring Chains of Olympus into the timeline. And I believe, as far as Ghost of Sparta is concerned, it's in Ragnarok, I believe, where Kratos mentions Deimos by name, which would, of course, confirm his existence and bring Ghost of Sparta into the canon timeline. Hell, Ragnarok even kind of brings up Kratos' cameo in Mortal Kombat 9. So it would appear that everything Kratos touches is canon in some way or another in this world. Um, I'm gonna back up a little bit because the more I thought about it, and the more I realized, I think a lot of the issues with God of War 3 actually got their start in God of War 2. Um, and we may not have seen that because, God of War 2 came out. Things were said, things were alluded to, but, um, you know, God of War 3 wasn't out yet, so we had no way to look at them in the bigger picture. But I remember there being a part where before Kratos is killed, Zeus comes down and kind of points the finger at him and blames him in so many words for two things. The first of which being the death of Ares. Second of which is the opening of the box itself. And the primary reason, and then these two things happen to be quite intertwined, interlocked. But the primary reason why that stuff doesn't work for me is because, first and foremost, Zeus shouldn't give a flying F about Ares at this point. Because let's just remember, first off, that he uh, had this diabolical scheme to overthrow and kill him at one point, and we're just supposed to pretend like nothing happened because of that. Nothing, Ares wasn't punished. There was no turmoil. Uh, you know, I can't believe that all of that happened and Zeus just didn't know. I mean, this is the almighty, all-knowing Zeus. And actually, I think if it had been acknowledged, it would have fixed my issues between Ascension and 1. Whereas, instead of Ares being this whiny teenager who wants daddy's attention, maybe it would make sense that he was angry about being punished or whatever, or being caught in the act, and is destroying the city of one of the kids that he happens to favor more. Um, uh, but it doesn't really play out that way, obviously. The other thing is that, in terms of Ares' death, Athena does everything by the book. She does everything according to Zeus's very own law, which he is breaking. There's nothing wrong there. There's nothing wrong in terms of Kratos' overall involvement. If we want to get a little bit more in depth with that and look at it under a microscope, you could say, in terms of the box, Zeus knew exactly what was in there. He locked them in there himself, and if it would have been a problem to have Kratos open it, he could have said something. He could have stepped in and went, opening this box, you're going to unleash stuff that doesn't need to be out in the world. So there's that. And there's also the fact of, if he was so against Ares' death, he shouldn't have been involved. Because whether you remember it or not, Zeus was there. Zeus actually hands over his lightning bolts, I believe it is, to help Kratos in his journey to get the box, which I automatically interpret as kind of a condolence or an allowance of these things to happen. So the idea that he is so pissed off about Ares' death and the opening of the box doesn't really make any sense, because he does nothing to stop it himself. Now I know that in regards to Kratos and his involvement in this, Athena is kind of the overall, she's the one kind of dragging his leash and telling him what to do and how to do it. But again, this is Zeus, right? The almighty, all-knowing Zeus. You can't tell me that he was off in a corner somewhere twiddling his thumbs and had no idea what was going on in the world with his own kids and everything. I don't know. And like, to go back to the whole Ghost of Sparta thing, it would have been really easy to say that, the opening of the box is what made Zeus realize that, like, he made a bad judgment call with Deimos, and he realized that Kratos was the one that he needed to be worried about, and things have excelled it too far. That's something to be worried about. That's something to fear. Again, it doesn't do that, so I have to look at it kind of as it lies. For me personally, if you want a reason to kill Kratos and have everything play out the way that it needs to play out, you get rid of this prophecy stuff, because I don't really think it's needed necessarily. I think it's just kind of a nice bow that ties everything else together. But if you get rid of it, you're left with this character, this guy who is constantly having his chain yanked, right? He's being pacified, he's being controlled, he's being, yada yada yada, to prevent him from getting what he really desires. And like I alluded to earlier, when talking about God of War 2, he's getting more and more angry. And it's this cycle of, the more you don't give him what he's asking for, the more you pacify him, the more you try to control him, the more you lie to him, the angrier he gets. The more angrier he gets, the more of a liability he becomes to the Olympians and everything Zeus has built. Because at the end of the day, he is a loose cannon with god powers who wants nothing more than to rip your head off. That alone makes all the sense in the world as to why Zeus would target him and make him this enemy of the gods. You don't need all of that stuff. All of the prophecy stuff, all of the Pandora's box stuff, besides, the reason, the weapon to kill Ares. Past that, you don't really need it. You have the basis of a really good character developed plot right there. I don't know. It just and then you get to the actual end of the game, where they do this really aggressive heel turn with Athena for no reason, which on one hand, I guess you could say they might be expressing sort of that, in spite of everything that happens, it's all about greed with the gods, right? So regardless of who they are and what happens to them or the world, they're only really out for themselves. I can see themes of that being expressed, but overall, to me, it just comes across as a really desperate attempt to solidify the fact that the Olympians and Zeus are the villains, and Kratos is meant to be a good guy. Now, the issue that I have with that is that, first off, we don't need all this extra stuff to convince me that Zeus is a bad person, right? If we know anything about Greek mythology, in real life, we know that the gods aren't, Zeus, most of all, or least of all, is a stand-up moral character. You know, he's not a great role model at all. And the gods, kind of more broadly speaking, are kind of assholes to begin with, right? And in terms of, so you don't need all this extra unnecessary story stuff for me to buy into the fact that Zeus is a bad dude. And as far as Kratos being a good guy, there are two lenses in which you can look at the Greek saga. One is you can see it as this story of this guy, this devout mortal man who is being used and abused by the gods in which he serves, and he's had enough of it, and he's very, very angry, and seeks revenge, destroying everything, tearing the sky down. And you can get behind that as a protagonist, and you can cheer that on, cheer the little guy, if you will. That's probably half of the plot. The other half has to do with the folly of man, right? The idea that for one, Kratos is the creator of his own misery, right? If it wasn't for his own arrogance and this rejection of death, he wouldn't be in this situation. If he would have just, done what his culture demands and obtained the glory of dying on the battlefield as this, Spartan soldier, none of this would have happened. And then there's just the fact that he really is not a good guy at all. Like, there's multiple occasions where he says he literally cares about nothing. The world and everyone in it can die as far as he's concerned. And the only thing that he personally wants is to see Zeus and the rest of the gods dead. Now, obviously, depending how you look at it, for good reason. But this guy is definitely not meant to be like we're rooting for you, Kratos, you're such a good guy type of protagonist. Like there's a lot of gray area as far as the morals and the decision making and the developments of these characters and their reasons for doing everything. There's a lot of ifs and whats and gray areas there that make it so, I don't really think Zeus is 100% the villain. I don't really think Kratos is 100% the hero, right? They're kind of, you get both sides, and I think that you can see them as both. But I think they really wanted to kind of leave you with this taste in your mouth so they could end it off on a positive note, right? They probably wanted Kratos to come off extra hero-ish, so that and they have him release the power of hope, which is what was the weapon that killed Ares all along, was hope. He releases it into the world as kind of his last act, and I think that was just meant to symbolize him, kind of doing one last good deed for for Greece and his world, and um, kind of leaving, capping off the Greek saga, so we could move forward into what would follow with the Norse stuff. But yeah, just in closing, guys, I'd love to talk about this. I know a lot of it was kind of rambling and me being all over the place, but I'd really love to know your thoughts on the story, and kind of the parts where it goes a little bit awry, and kind of what you think of the characters therein. But until next time, guys, take care, and we'll see you later.